So welcome everyone and happy summer to the American Cetacean Society San Francisco Bay Chapter's July 2024 speaker event. And I'm Susan Hopp, board member responsible for our speaker program, and with me is fellow board member Anne Marie Batchelor Rivers. For anyone new to the American Cetacean Society, we are a chapter within a national organization that is the oldest nonprofit dedicated to the protection of whales, dolphins, porpoises, and their habitat. And we do this through education, community engagement, and awarding grants towards cetacean research. We appreciate your donations in support of our mission. Donations fund our research grants and expenses for these talks. And it's easy to donate on our website if you haven't at time of registration. So again, thank you. Now, we do have an important announcement, and that is we're really excited to bring back our naturalist class. It's an online course over 6 Wednesday evenings, and it begins on September 11th. It's really a great opportunity to learn from local experts, and participants will come away with a keener understanding of marine mammals, seabirds, sharks, and the ecology of our marine sanctuaries. Registration is on our website under the Education tab, and we will put the registration link into the chat as well. Okay, for tonight, so we're recording this session, and please put your questions in the Q&A. That's actually better than the chat. And after the presentation, we'll do our best to get to them. So tonight's talk, which has garnered a lot of attention, is whale conservation in San Francisco Bay and beyond. And we are really fortunate to have as our speaker someone truly at the forefront of both experience and innovation toward initiatives to minimize mortality threats of whale entanglement and ship strikes. Kathi George is the director of Cetacean Conservation Biology for the Marine Mammal Center. She oversees cetacean research, large whale entanglement response, and synthesis of data for management and conservation impact. Since joining the center in 2019, she has expanded advocacy efforts to address two of the greatest threats to large whales worldwide: entanglement and vessel strikes. Kathi collaborates closely with many different stakeholders in her work. She serves in the conservation seat for the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council. She is a member of the California Dungeness Crab Fishing Gear Working Group and the San Francisco Harbor Safety Committee, where she is leading a project to reduce the risk of vessel strike on large whales in and near San Francisco Bay. She is a certified Level 3 co-investigator with NOAA's Marine Mammal Health and Stranding Response Program, which permits her to respond to entangled whales. She has participated in 6 whale disentanglements, numerous entangled whale responses, and over 50 sea lion disentanglements. So, Kathi, thank you for your dedication in your work and for being here to tell us all about it. And I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that introduction, and I am excited to be here today. I really want to thank the American Cetacean Society for creating a community that is so accessible and allowing us to continue to learn from each other and share the work that we're doing and find new collaboration opportunities. So let me share my screen. So I am going to be talking about whale conservation in San Francisco and beyond today, and I'm going to be sharing the work of the Marine Mammal Center. So the Marine Mammal Center is the world's largest veterinary hospital for seals, sea lions, dolphins, and porpoises. Our headquarters are in Sausalito, and we respond to 600 miles of California coastline. In addition to our headquarters in Sausalito, we have field offices in Morro Bay and Moss Landing. We also have a Monk Seal Hospital and Conservation Program on the Big Island in Hawaii. Our mission is to advance global ocean conservation through marine mammal rescue and rehabilitation, scientific research, and education. And this coming year, we will be celebrating our 50th anniversary. My team that I work with is the Cetacean Conservation Biology team, and we're focused on the conservation of cetaceans and the habitats on which they depend. We conduct research on the biology, behavior, and ecology of cetaceans, and I should pause and say that cetaceans are whales, dolphins, and porpoises. We publish our results in peer-reviewed literature, and we identify and respond to welfare and survival threats such as entanglement and ship strike. We take the information that we collect through all of those areas, including community science, and we analyze that information and share it with decision makers so they can make informed decisions that both protect the cetaceans and protect the ocean and their habitat that they need. Central to all of this, and kind of as you heard in my introduction, I strongly, strongly believe in collaboration, and we must work with each other as well as industry towards common goals. And I will add that our work is in 2 bays. So we are focused in San Francisco Bay and the waters offshore, and Monterey Bay and the adjacent waters between those areas. There are many threats to cetaceans, and they started with whaling. They depleted populations, some populations are extinct, and other populations have been lessened in numbers. The threats vary from entanglement and ship strike, which is what we're going to talk about today, to disturbance and noise from human activities. Climate change is impacting cetacean habitats and food sources. The ocean warming is altering ecosystems, and pollution from various sources is contaminating their environment. I really want to focus on human impacts today, with a primary emphasis on reducing the risk of vessel strike and entanglements to whales. This particular whale is known as prop mom. She is a threatened humpback whale, and this photo was taken from San Francisco Bay. And as you can see from the injuries along her side, that she was hit by a large ship. Fortunately, she survived, and she had a calf in recent years that was observed with her. This whale had its photo taken in April. This is an entanglement that you can see a line wrapped tightly around the tailstock, and it's going over the fluke of the whale. It was through Happy Whale, which is a program that I will be talking about throughout my talk. We were able to take the image of this tail and identify this whale as being sighted in Mexico in February, and this picture was taken in April. So we know this whale has carried this entanglement for at least 2 months, and unfortunately, it hasn't been located since the time that the photo was taken. I want to talk about the primary cetaceans that we study at the Marine Mammal Center. These two, the humpback whale and the gray whale. The humpback whale has 2 distinct populations that migrate and feed along our coast. The population that breeds in Central America is endangered, and the population that breeds in Mexico is threatened. Together, there are around 5,000 humpback whales, and over recent years, we have seen an increase in their growth rate. The gray whale is not endangered. However, it just came out of an unusual mortality event, or UME, and during this UME, it lost 45% of the population. So greater than 10,000 whales were lost in the last 4 years, and the population today is around 14,500. Other cetaceans that we study are the blue whale, which is the largest animal that's ever existed and the loudest whale in the ocean. It is endangered. There are less than 2,000 of blue whales off of our coastline. And something unique about blue whales is that they forage throughout their entire migratory journey from the Gulf of California to the Costa Rica Dome and up into the Arctic. They are finding krill all along their migration. Fin whales are the second largest whale, and they are endangered. There are around 11,000 off of our coast. And then we have our smaller cetaceans, the harbor porpoise and the bottlenose dolphin. And I want to highlight that all of our work is done under NOAA permit. We have 3 different permits at the Marine Mammal Center. We have a permit for scientific research. We have a permit for marine mammal stranding, and we have permits that are assigned to individuals for large whale entanglement response. And I'm going to start offshore with my story, and we're going to be working our way into the bay. But Monterey Bay being one of the areas we work in, we're going to start down south. So whales can become entangled in fishing gear and marine debris, which can cause serious injury and death. The entanglements can be caused by curiosity, distraction, or the whale's inability to avoid the threat. Responding to entangled large whales is inherently dangerous, and only trained and authorized responders should approach the whale within 100 yards. So please stay 100 yards away if you see an entanglement. If you do see an entanglement, you can call 877 SOS Whale or channel 16 on your marine radio, and this will start the process to begin the formation of a response. The whale entanglement work is under NOAA's direction. There are standards that are followed by all members throughout the country, and even in line with the global whale entanglement response network that the International Whaling Commission supports. So if you see a whale, please call the number and do not approach the whale and do not try to do anything yourself. Whales can be unpredictable and they can react violently, even if we're there to help them. So when you see an entanglement above water, you may notice in this case, there is a line over the whale's back. And it may look like I want to go approach that and cut that line off of the whale. However, what you see below the water is oftentimes different than what you see above the water. And any cuts that you may make without understanding the whole entanglement could constrict the injury in a different location on the whale and potentially cause more damage. Or it could create the inability to work with the whale. When we're disentangling whales, we're always in small boats, we're never in the water, and we're holding on to lines that are coming off of the whale or lines that we attach to the entanglement on the whale that we use to walk hand over hand to get as close to the entangled whale as possible. Those that are involved in the network go through extensive training. This photo on the left is our team training down in Monterey Bay. We use long poles with cameras or knives or other specialized tools to help reach out and grab the entangling material or to cut the entangling material off. You can see in the orange pelican case some of the examples of the tools that we use. We have curved knives, so if it touches the whale, it won't cause any additional damage. We have carabiners and grapples that can grab onto nets or lines that are coming off of the whale. And I don't know if you can notice this, but the engine is up in the water because we really don't want our boat to become part of the entanglement. This is a photo of a humpback whale from 2017 that was disentangled. It was anchored in gear up in Crescent City. This whale had been swimming offshore in deep water. It picked up a single line and cork from the sablefish fishery, and it swam closer to shore. And when it swam closer to shore, It swam into a set of coonstripe gear and got itself entangled in 15 different lines with 5 to 8 pots on each line plus sea anchors. So this whale was heavily anchored in the location that it was. The trained responders know to work from the head to the tail. The tail is the strongest part of the body. You don't want to release that part first and have that possibly interact with you or the vessel that you are on. This whale, you can see there's a pole with a knife at the end. This knife was able to slide under those lines and cut them, and ultimately the whale was successfully disentangled. This one response that I want to share from 2014 just highlights that every entanglement is unique and there is nothing the same in responses. This particular response went over 18 days and we covered 610 nautical miles before the whale was disentangled. On day one, we had a naturalist and ACS member from LA that was aboard a whale watching vessel, and she noticed this humpback whale that was dragging these buoys behind it consistently. She took photos, which are really important to us, both from understanding how the entanglement is happening, to identifying the individual, to using this information to inform prevention efforts. A photo was taken of the dorsal fin. Typically with humpback whales, we identify individual whales by their tail, but we are looking at ways now that you can identify an individual whale by its dorsal fin. In the middle photo, it shows us where the whale is with the dorsal fin here on the whale and the buoys behind. This gives us an idea of kind of how much gear it was. Close-ups of the buoy allow us to get information about the fishermen that the state could then reach out to and ask some questions such as, did you notice your gear was missing? How deep was it? Where was it set? And again, all of this information is used to inform the prevention side. We put cameras underwater, and this is what the entanglement looked like underwater. Water's very green down in Monterey, but there were multiple really tight wraps around the tail. You could see it was already starting to go into the blubber and under the skin, and you could see a little bit of the vertebrae here. 18 days later is when the disentanglement happened. There are a couple photos coming up that may be sensitive in nature. This particular photo was a close-up of the injury on the 18th day. As you can see, the wound got worse. There is a little bit of blood in there, which is actually a good sign that blood flow was still going to the tail, so the tail was not lost. But here in this area, there was a knot that prevented those two lines from coming apart and limiting the ability to unwrap the entanglement from the tail. This is a video that you can see. Peter is the person on the front of the boat. This is one of our carbon fiber poles, and you can see a curved knife right here. He is the whale surfacing. He is going to reach the pole and knife in and make a cut where that knot is. And he successfully cut the knot with that one move. And this is what it looked like underwater after he made the cut. The two lines had separated. Again, you see a little bit of blood. Again, this is a good sign. This means that the whale still has use of the tail. And what's going to happen here is the cut that he made is going to finally break on the line. And then this other line came off the whale and the whale swam away. And it was a successful disentanglement. Oftentimes, we don't know what happens after the whale is disentangled because the whale swims away, and we rely on opportunistic sightings and making sure that there's photographs to be able to identify that whale. But we were fortunate that 30 days later, on day 48, after the whale had been reported as entangled, it was observed back up in Monterey in the same area that it had been feeding when it was reported as entangled. And you can see that the injury is healing really well. So this is the case when entanglement can be successful, and in some cases, entanglement can lead to the hopeful recovery of populations, like on the East Coast with the right whale that is struggling right now. This chart shows confirmed entanglement reports since 2004. Prior to 2014, the average number of entanglement reports was around 10 per year. Numbers have increased due to awareness of who to call, 877 SOS Whale. Congratulations, you are all now level 1 responders for knowing that information, as well as the kind of unfortunate storm of events in 2015-16 with the marine heat wave, the delay in the opening of the Dungeness crab fishery to align with the return of a large number of humpback whales, and the perfect storm unfortunately created over 50 entanglements that were noted that year. This year, there were 27 confirmed entanglements off of Washington, Oregon, and California, or off the coastlines of other states and countries, but they were entangled in US West Coast commercial fishing gear. This remains above the numbers of reported entanglements prior to 2014, but it continues a pattern of fewer reported entanglements compared to 2016. And similar to recent years, the blue represents humpback whales, which continue to be the most common species reported as entangled. Studies on the East Coast show that for every 1 report, there are 10 unreported entanglements. I know that I want to be in a business where we don't have to respond. I really want to get myself out of the job of response. And I sit on the Dungeness Crab Fishing Gear Working Group. John Kalambakidis from Cascadia Research Collective is also on this working group, as well as many fishermen, other nonprofits, fishing gear representatives, scientists, state and federal officials. And the goal of this working group is to have healthy whale populations and healthy fisheries. And with entanglement response, we're often waiting for the report to come in. We're on call 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. And John had the idea to kind of shift this model and let's be proactive, go out, do surveys, collect scientific data, be prepared to respond, and we can inform the real-time needs of whale data for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Risk Assessment and Mitigation Program, or RAMP program. So surveys were designed along the entire California coast, along the coastline in the Dungeness crab fishery zones. On the left, you see Oregon down to Point Arena area. In the center, you see San Francisco Bay, Point Reyes up to Bodega Bay and Monterey Bay. And on the right is Morro Bay area. And these surveys are undertaken at the 100 and 200 meter isobaths. At the 100 meter isobaths, the surveys were chosen because that's an area where whales are likely feeding on small fish and could be overlapping with vessels. So 100 meter line indicated humpback whales can feed on either krill or small bait fish. When they're feeding on the small bait fish, they're closer to shore at that 100 meter isobath or before. And if they're feeding on krill, they're further offshore at 200 meters. So this gave us that information that we could share with the department. This is a photo taken during one of our research surveys. This is the center's research vessel. It is currently located in Moss Landing, but travels along the coast. And this is a map of the different fishing zones for the Dungeness crab fishery. On the right is just a screenshot of the Department of Fish and Wildlife's webpage. If you're curious about more information on the RAMP program or whale safe fisheries, Google this. There's a lot of information that you could find on their webpage. But the surveys that we undertook supported zones 1 through 5, which is south of Morro Bay and occasionally into zone 6. And there are different There are current regulations that say if a certain number of whales are seen in a zone, some form of management action needs to happen. So before the season would open, during the season, and towards the end of the season, we would go out and collect data on what whales are out there and where they are. This is an example of the map that we would produce that would show our white is our vessel track lines, and the dots represent different species of whales that we sighted. Red is humpback. This was in the fall. We saw a lot of humpbacks offshore, and the dot size indicated the group size, so from 1 all the way up to 15. And this information was shared with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They compiled this information, plus they have other approved data sources, and they have other information that they package together. These reports are available on their website. They create a preliminary assessment based on this data. This is the management recommendation that they propose and why. It is shared with the working group. The working group has a chance to review the available data, make alternative suggestions to management actions, and then that information is shared with the Director of Fish and Wildlife, who ultimately makes a decision on the status of that fishery. And since the RAMP program has been in place, there have been delayed starts, early closures, depth restrictions, and pot limits, all with the hopes of reducing all with the intention to reduce the risk of entanglement in the fishery. So a lot of positive movement on that fishery. And we've talked about entanglement response and the prevention efforts, but our work doesn't end there. Another significant threat comes from something much larger and faster: vessels. I do want to say this out loud. Similar to the fishermen who don't want to entangle whales, vessel operators don't want to hit whales either. However, as some whale populations are increasing and they move more into spaces utilized by humans, the risk of ship strike becomes a greater concern. And collaboration is key to reducing those risks. And let's explore what's being done. So what we're looking at right here is a map of the voluntary vessel speed reduction that is currently in place. It goes from May 1st through December 31st up here in our local sanctuaries. And this is sponsored by the National Marine Sanctuaries, the U.S. Coast Guard, and EPA. So the primary benefit is to reduce the risk of lethal strikes on whales. It asks vessels 300 gross tons and larger to slow down to 10 knots. 10 knots was specifically chosen because that's the speed, based on reports and studies on the East Coast, that the lethality significantly increases after. So if a whale is to get hit by a vessel traveling at 10 knots or less, there is a higher chance of survival than if it was hit at a speed greater than 10 knots. So vessels 300 gross tons and larger are asked to slow down in the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary waters, Cordell Bank, and Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuaries, along with the traffic separation scheme during this time of year when whales are here in higher numbers. And I want to highlight, this is the traffic separation scheme. All large ships coming into the bay come in through either the northern lane, the western lane, or the southern lane. And this year, it's exciting that the voluntary areas expanded to include Monterey Bay and all of the sanctuary waters. The Benioff Ocean Science Laboratory, in collaboration with technology and research partners, created the Whale Safe system. It's a data-driven tool that provides near real-time information on both whale and ship activity to give mariners extra eyes and ears on the water. The pilot system launched in the Santa Barbara Channel in 2020, and in 2022, the Marine Mammal Center partnered with the Benioff Ocean Science Laboratory to launch Whale Safe San Francisco. The system provides near real-time alerts on whale presence by combining data from 3 different types of technology. 1 from acoustic monitoring, 2 from a blue whale habitat model, and 3 from whale sightings with our own human eyes. One of the technologies WhaleSafe uses is an acoustic monitoring system developed by scientists at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. It consists of a moored buoy that uses a digital acoustic monitoring instrument, also called a DMON, with an integrated hydrophone attached at the aluminum base on the seafloor. You can see this right here. This is where the hydrophone is. This instrument listens 24/7 to noise, processes and records the audio, and it's programmed with a software that automatically detects and classifies vocalizations of blue, fin, and humpback whales using a library of calls that are stored on board. That data is sent up the stretch hose to a platform computer system that is attached to the surface buoy. And it's sent to shore every 2 hours via satellite transmitter, where the classification is verified by an expert and incorporated into the WhaleSafe system. The San Francisco buoy, pictured here in the middle, is in about 285 feet of water and moored just outside the western shipping lane. And it was strategically chosen to be in this location so we could hear whales in the vicinity of the shipping lanes. And also we wanted it inshore enough so we weren't picking up whales that were vocalizing off of the shelf. We wanted to make sure that the whales that we would be hearing would be up here on the shelf, sorry, off the slope. Again, this system is listening to underwater noise 24/7. It automatically detects and classifies the vocalizations of those 3 whale species and sends this data back to scientists on shore to provide near real-time acoustic detections. Similar to the fire danger levels, the WhaleSafe system creates a whale presence rating. So it takes all 3 of these technologies, the acoustic monitoring, which we just talked about, a blue whale habitat model that is updated on a daily basis to show likely suitable habitat for blue whales, and the warmer colors indicate a higher level of habitat suitability, and the visual sightings information, and that creates the whale presence rating, which gives ship captains and crews more situational awareness out on the water. WhaleSafe also creates report cards for the shipping companies on how well the vessels are cooperating with the voluntary 10-knot speed recommendation. So these report cards are dynamically updated every day while the speed recommendations are in place from May through December. And then the operators are given an annual grade at the end of each season. This is for Ocean Network Express. You can see back here in, if I could, tiny little eyes, and Susie, in 2018, that it was complying less than 10% of the time, and they're currently almost at 80% of the time. This information is publicly available, and I want to highlight that it's also been beneficial for conversations with industry. The Benioff team has been able to create comprehensive reports for companies upon request, and it's been a really useful tool for engaging with operators and companies to encourage them to change their fleet speed. This is the current cooperation rates in the column for 2023. This is for the overall season in the San Francisco and Monterey areas were combined together. Santa Barbara was separate. And for June of this year, we are seeing levels here in the San Francisco area around 75%. So I hope to continue to see this number go up and to the right. The vessel speed reduction program is in the sanctuaries and in the shipping lanes, but it's not in the exclusion area or in San Francisco Bay. Those areas do not have the same protections as a sanctuary. And San Francisco Bay has commercial ports in here that rate as the 3rd busiest port complex. Oakland is the 8th busiest container port in the United States. The Bay also has 85 public marinas, high-speed ferries, and challenging environmental conditions for a variety of vessel types. And these are some examples of the vessels that use San Francisco Bay. And now we have cetaceans occupying these same waters. I'm gonna start with our smaller cetaceans, so the dolphins and the porpoises, and there have been some really exciting discoveries. The harbor porpoise, which was here prior to World War II, had left the bay and nobody had seen them for over 65 years. And they returned in 2008 and they've been here ever since. And we can almost see them, we can see them now on a daily basis. The Golden Gate Bridge has been an amazing platform to study the harbor porpoises. There is no distraction by vessel noise or flying drones overhead. You have the perfect platform and height to look down to see the harbor porpoises. And you can see Bill Keener here in this photo taking photos. Being up on the bridge, having this fantastic view. The team has made new discoveries on sexual behavior. This has led to international collaborations and kind of understanding if this particular phenomena that we're seeing here on the West Coast is being seen in other locations. And with our colleagues and partners in Alaska and out here on the West Coast, we've also observed harbor porpoises who typically eat smaller schooling fish foraging on large prey. And in some cases here in the Bay Area, they have asphyxiated on that large prey. That prey, the harbor porpoises on the East Coast don't have that same issue. So we're continuing to learn more about the harbor porpoise. The California coastal bottlenose dolphin is seen in Southern California in warmer waters. It's typically within 1 to 2 kilometers of shore, sometimes even as close as 500 meters. And they really live in this narrow ribbon of habitat adjacent to the coast in shallow water. And they have expanded their range up to our area in 2007. And we have seen them even go beyond our range here. I have a slide coming up, so get your cell phones ready to take a picture of a QR code with one of our papers that I want to share with everyone today. But these dolphins are utilizing San Francisco Bay. And in 2019, we made the observation with Point Blue Conservation Science that there was several dolphins that were out by Southeast Farallon Island. And this is incredibly rare, and this is the farthest documented occurrence for a bottlenose dolphin from shore. The bottlenose dolphin and harbor porpoise haven't lived in the same area in the Bay Area before. And with our team of pathologists here at the center and our partners at Cal Academy, we have been documenting cases of porpoicide. And this is where, in the bottom right photo here, I should say, here's the dolphin, here are harbor porpoises. And in this photo right here, we can see a bottlenose dolphin ramming this harbor porpoise. So they do end up killing the harbor porpoises. This phenomenon is known as porpoicide, and we're still trying to understand why this is happening. There have been thoughts about this. It's mostly male dolphins that are doing this to the harbor porpoises. It could be to practice their infanticide skills, or it's to maintain their fighting skills between their male associates. Males can be very competitive, and they do form alliances. So males unable to obtain access to a female may end up being one of the perpetrators. So right now we are looking at our Dolphin ID catalog, which is one of the, I think it might be the last remaining catalog in California, and seeing if we can identify any of the dolphins that are involved in porpoising. And we are uniquely positioned in the world to study this and find out the drivers of this issue and why this is happening. And we have more cases on porpoising than anywhere in the world. And we have the most advanced pathology approaches too. This here is a paper. This talks about the northern range expansion of our bottlenose dolphins. I think I saw Bill and Mark on the attendee list. They may be able to answer any questions that come up because I'm not paying attention to the chat right now, but encourage you to take a look, download this paper and read it and learn about the expansion of dolphins to our area. This next paper that I want to share is part of a book, Sex and Cetaceans. This describes the sexual behavior and anatomy of harbor porpoises. And this one is not to be missed. I know that Mark doesn't like this terminology as much, but I think it's kind of poignant. One of their prior colleagues, John Stern, labeled the Golden Gate Bridge as the funnel of love. While it may not be the funnel of love, I think that's the perfect adjective to describe this paper here. So I hope everyone can take a picture and download this and read it. So in addition to the harbor porpoise and occasional bottlenose dolphins that we see in the bay, we've also had 2 species of large whales that are utilizing San Francisco Bay as habitat over the last several years. The photo on the left shows a humpback whale near the city, and the photo on the right is a gray whale. And both of these photos were taken on the same day, on March 30th of 2021. We see the greatest numbers of gray whales in the bay between March and May, and we see the greatest number of humpback whales in the bay between May and July. So this map shows sightings of humpback and gray whales between 2016 and 2023. The blue dots represent humpback whales. The gold dots represent the gray whales. You can see that they occupy different areas of the bay. The humpback whales tend to stay further out in the Golden Gate Strait, under the bridge, and just east of the bridge, while the gray whales venture into the bay and are often seen between Alcatraz and Angel Island, in addition to Raccoon Strait. And with these sightings, I just want us to kind of pause and reflect back on the number of vessels of all different sizes that are using these waters. And having whales and vessels in the same place, risk can be greater for people, or they can be greater for whales, depending on what size vessel you're on. This is a photo of a gray whale taken from Crissy Field. The whale is very much alive. It is feeding on the seafloor. Gray whales will often turn on their right side and skim the seafloor and eat the tiny crustaceans that they find in the mud. You will see mud plumes kind of coming out behind them when they are doing this behavior. And we have confirmed feeding in San Francisco Bay. We've observed a number of mud plumes from shallow waters out to deeper waters in Central Bay. And these whales can be harder to see than humpback whales, especially while they're feeding and low in the water. We are investigating the gray whale presence in the San Francisco Bay, especially in light of that unusual mortality event that I mentioned. The gray whale, the 45% of gray whales that were lost, a lot of that was due to climate change and malnutrition and not having the prey in the quantity that they need up in the Arctic. So we're looking at body conditions. So why are whales coming into the bay? Are they here to rest? It's interesting that they're showing foraging behaviors. And there are a group of gray whales that do not migrate between Alaska and Mexico. And that group of gray whales is called the Pacific Coast Feeding Group. They're typically smaller than the gray whales that do the migration, but this is their feeding range from southern Canada down to northern California. We are investigating whether any of the animals that we're seeing in the San Francisco Bay region, if they are part of this feeding group and it's expanding, or other unique things that we could learn about the whales that we're observing here in our area. This is a paper, oops, that is apparently a paper I wanted to skip over, but I don't. This is a paper that came out last year. Mark Weber is the lead author on it. And this came about because of community scientists in Pacifica, as well as a friend at the California Academy of Sciences. There were gray whales being observed near shore that were feeding during the summer. And these, you could see in this photo, this is a gray whale. It had just lunge feed. You could see the little anchovies kind of flopping around in the water and coming out of the mouth. Most of the gray whales, I showed you another photo, they're they're mud feeding, they're feeding off the bottom. This behavior hadn't been documented in this area before. And there were whales here in Pacifica that were observed prey switching, and their foraging behavior was changing in moments from feeding on the seafloor to feeding on fish at the surface. And this is a sign of hope, I feel, because gray whales do have, with the climate change and the lack of prey up in the Arctic, maybe they do have this ability to find alternative food sources that could sustain their population. This is another photo taken from the Golden Gate Bridge. These are two humpback whales that are lunge feeding. Once again, you could kind of see the small anchovies in the water and near their mouth. There was a paper that our team published on new urban habitat for the endangered humpback whales. This is regarding the humpback whales utilizing the Golden Gate Strait and the bay for feeding. The whales will come in and they're in areas with high vessel traffic, and they're not going deep underwater. So even if you can't see them at the surface, it doesn't mean that they're in a safe place under the water. And this is why we're concerned. So another way that I look at my team's work is looking from ecology and studying the humpback whales and their environment to pathology and working with the pathologists at the Marine Mammal Center. This photo was taken in 2019 during the gray whale UME. These are two different gray whales here. Angel Island is one of the areas that we perform our necropsies. Our team that year necropsied 17 different whales, and 6 of those whales had injuries consistent with vessel strike, which was almost half of the reported vessel strikes from California. This whale, it was an adult male gray whale. This is a photo up here in the upper right that shows the whale when it was first observed in the bay in February. This whale was observed for a period of 75 days. It's in good, healthy condition. This arrow is just showing the match in the identification on the side. And in the beginning of March, there was no scar on this whale. And at the end of March, there was a scar visible on this whale. And into April, we started seeing an increasing lice load. The whale started to get skinnier. You can kind of see the indentation here by the scapula, and the body just started to severely decline. It was last seen in April. And on May 7th, it was found deceased on North Beach in Point Reyes National Seashore. And upon necropsy, the team determined that this whale died from blunt force trauma from a large ship, but also prior to its death by a ship, it had been hit by another vessel that had fractured its vertebrae and ribs, and that's what caused that scarring pattern and ultimately led to the death of the whale. And this chart is similar to the entanglement chart, but for ship strikes, and this is focused just on California. Between 2000 and 2022, 98 vessel strikes were recorded. I do want to say that this is severely underestimated. Most whales, when they die, or sorry, when they're hit by a ship, they will sink. And we will never know what happened to that whale. There are modeled estimates by Cotton Rockwood et al. That estimate 83 endangered whales are killed per year between the months of May and September. That's not reflected here in this chart. This year for 2024, we have responded to 4 dead whales, and one of the whales had been hit by a vessel. Its injuries were consistent with vessel strike, and this was a gray whale inside the bay at Crown Beach in Alameda. This is a map showing we do necropsies of whales from San Mateo County up through Marin County. And between 2017 and 2023, we had 35 recorded vessel strikes. Gray whales were the primary species that we see being struck by whales, followed by the endangered whales, humpback, fin, and blue. And these dots represent the locations where the whales were necropsied. But I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. I do have a positive story of collaboration that is just getting started. I sit on the Harbor Safety Committee in San Francisco, and during my first years of participation in this committee, I mostly sat and listened and learned about what others had to share. But I would always share sightings of whales and share results from necropsies to keep that community informed, because we need to know where the whales are so we can avoid them. And after sharing some of the recent data that you have seen here in this presentation, they agreed that the Harbor Safety Committee needed a marine mammals work group. And this work group was charged with reducing the risk of ship strike on whales while maintaining navigational safety. I mentioned earlier, we do have challenging environmental conditions in the bay. We don't want one issue to resolve and open up another issue. I have on the right a list of the member organizations, not the people, but all of the different stakeholders that are involved in this work group. And we are identifying different recommendations that we can do to reduce the risk of ship strike and maintain navigational safety. And one of the first actions that we have pushed through the Harbor Safety Committee is to create marine mammal guidelines and incorporate them into San Francisco's harbor safety plan. So that information is now there, and all of the stakeholders were behind that. So a really positive collaboration. But like I said, this work is just getting started and we have more to do. So hopefully I can come back another time and share the continued results from this work group. And then lastly, we take all of the information that we have gathered and analyzed and all of the data, and we summarize this information and we share it with decision makers so it can be applied to policies. Right now, the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary is going through their management plan review. and identifying any changes that they want to the management plan. It will go through public comment very soon, but data that we collect about marine mammals and ships is being used, or sorry, marine mammals is being used to inform that management plan. I was part of the Joint Ship Strike Working Group, the Dungeness Crab Fishing Gear Working Group, and the ramp regulations, and providing input into that, along with the Harbor Safety Committee and other committees. So really want to utilize the science that we're doing for good and sharing it with others so good decisions can be made. And our cetacean work at the center doesn't stop with our team and the pathology team. We have public outreach and engagement is key in supporting our cetacean conservation efforts. The center participates in fairs and guest speaking opportunities to raise awareness, gain community input, and promote ways to get involved and take action. This is Mark and Pilar on our team, and they are at the Earth Day event with the Pacifica Beach Coalition this past year. There are a lot of exciting things happening in Pacifica right now. There have been a lot of whale observations from shore, so I'm not sure if anyone has seen anything today, but it is a great time to get out on the coast and look for whales. And then we continue to engage with community members at our hospital here in Sausalito. They have a Marine Science Sunday program that they have 2 different themes that talk about the work that we do: marine mammals of San Francisco Bay and magnificent migrations. You can look on the website and find out when those public programs will happen. And there's also featured audio and video content in an interactive tablet-based visitor tour. And one of the things that really excites me is this is how everyone here on this call can engage with the center and help support cetacean research and conservation. And that is by sharing your sightings. You could do this through 3 ways. You can go to the Marine Mammal Center's website and share your sighting that way. You can share your sighting via the Whale Alert app, which I have put inside this dashed box. These are just some screenshots of a phone, but you can report live whale sightings here, and the Whale Alert data feeds into the Whale Safe program, which informs that whale presence rating. So if you see whales offshore or in the bay, record those sightings on Whale Alert, and that can help increase mariner awareness. And the third way that you can share your sightings is through Happy Whale. And this requires a photo to upload, but you can take your photo of your individual whale and upload it to Happy Whale, and it'll look through its database that I believe has about 95% of the humpback whales off of our coast right now included in it, and it will match it. And you can learn where your whale has been sighted before and potentially what breeding ground it breeds on. So it's become a really valuable tool for us in understanding injuries on whales, kind of observations pre and post, learning about kind of entanglements, when a whale got entangled, when it was sighted, if a whale had been entangled previously and is sighted and gear free. But a really unique opportunity to learn more about the individual whale. And this is a little bit of an advertisement, but we do have an early career program on the Cetacean Conservation Biology team, and we will be announcing 2 internships this fall. They are 6-month paid internships with housing, where we provide training in field data collection, photo ID, vessel and drone operations, and each intern creates their own independent research project. In the photos you see here were our interns the first year. This is our 2nd year of the program right now, but our 1st year interns, Pilar on the left and Josie on the right. These are their poster presentations that they gave at the San Francisco Estuary Conference, and Pilar won an Ocean Innovator Award for her work on understanding vessel types that use the bay And Josie won the NSF GRFP award, the Graduate Research Fellowship Program award that is supporting her school. It's a highly competitive program, and she is looking at understanding the individual gray whales that utilize the bay. So encourage, if you know anybody that would be interested in this program, it should be announced in the fall. And then lastly, well, I've had the fortunate opportunity to be the one sharing information with all of you. It really takes a team to get the work done. This is the majority of our team, but not everyone, plus a few supporters and collaborators that we have. And I do want to thank also family and friends for allowing our team to have the time to do the work that we do. It really is critical. And we could not do this without our key partners. So we have a number of groups that we work with regularly, and grateful for all of their support and continued collaboration. And with that, I welcome any questions that anyone has. Thank you.
All right, that was fantastic, Kathy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take a breath because you've got quite a few questions here. So
Okay.
we'll get them started. The first one is there any possibility of putting temporary trackers on disentangled whales that can be collected after they automatically come off the whale?
That has been something that has been talked about in the past. It is a different permit that is needed to do that type of work. And there are some folks that have both of the permits, but there are some health questions about what kind of the whale had gone through. So it's something that's continued to be explored, but I don't have any answer right now on when that will be possible.
Okay, great. Is the larger number of blue whales being entangled somehow related to the species itself, like, for example, where it feeds? Or is it due to there generally being more blues in the zones of interest than grays, for example?
Yeah, the entanglements that we have seen lately off of our coast are mostly trap gear fisheries. In previous years, the Dungeness crab fishery was the only fishery required to mark their gear, and so we always knew it was Dungeness crab. In later years now, there is more gear marking, and there's continued new gear marking efforts to understand. A lot of times we just see a line on the whale. And in California, Oregon, and Washington, there will be different colored lines. That way, hopefully that will help us with identifying the fishery. But the blue whale entanglements, the blue color was the humpback whale on the chart, so I don't know if that was confusing. We have had a few blue whale reports, but we have had more gray whale entanglements reported. And I think that's because blue whales are further offshore, and the gray whales and the humpback whales are closer to shore, where more intense fishing efforts are.
Okay, great.
All right, hopefully that was an answer to multiple questions, because I added a little to that question.
Perfect. I think our listeners appreciate that. Can you speak more to the triggers that stop or delay, or how the decisions are made regarding crab season?
Yeah, so previously, prior to the regulation, the risk assessment and mitigation program becoming regulated, the working group looked at number of whales in the area, number of entanglements reported, where the prey was, and any fishing dynamics. So kind of what's happening with the season. If it's delayed, is everybody going to start fishing, or is it going to be delayed because of market price or other means? So kind of looking at how like that ecosystem works for kind of assuming when the fishing is going to happen. Now under regulations, we look at number of whales in a zone. We look at number of entanglements reported. In current regulations, there's also a 3-year rolling average of entanglements that is looked at. And additional information is also shared with the working group about habitat compression, or kind of what prey conditions look like, water temperatures, individual observations from the fishermen. And all of that information is reviewed, and there is a toolbox of options right now, and the department is looking to expand those options. But if we're seeing a lot of whales near shore, we may restrict fishing to a certain depth, or if there's a lot of whales offshore, fishing inside of those whales. If there are, this year we did pot restrictions, and the fishermen had to fish with 50% of their gear in the central management area because there were still a number of whales in the area. So a lot of the current information is being looked at, kind of where the whales are, entanglements, and then also incorporating prey and ocean conditions.
Right. So a really thoughtful process. And
Yes.
pretty, right.
Yeah.
Great. All right, now we're moving into back into ships. Do the ships that are traveling less than 10 knots get preferential, like, do they get any incentive, like, to unload their cargo or priority over other ships?
So there is the Blue Whales and Blue Skies program that is an incentive program that ships can enroll in, and they get awards. And I don't know if there's anyone from the Blue, I don't know if Jess is on the call or not, if anything could be added to the chat. Some of the ports have different options. Down in LA and Long Beach, I know there is a reduction in berth fees that a ship can get if they're transiting underneath their recommended speed. So it's something that is in play, and I don't have the specific details for it up here in our Bay Area.
Okay, we're glad to hear. It sounds like there's some motivation for them to try to adhere, although it looked like Southern California was a little lower than Northern with their 23 to 24. Okay, back to blues for you. What makes an area a suitable habitat for blue whales?
There is krill for them. So the oceanographic conditions align to have krill productivity.
All right, short and sweet.
Yep.
All right. So a question about the whale alert emails have said the hydrophones are offline for a while. Do you know the issue with that?
Yeah, unfortunately, the hydrophone had been removed. The buoy was caught on something, and it pulled the buoy off and the stretch hose off of the seafloor base. We are anticipating it to be redeployed in the fall timeframe, so September, October, with a new buoy. So I'm really looking forward to getting that buoy in place out here.
I bet. Okay. Okay. During the UME, since it was so heavy, is there any data on how the grays are doing now?
There is some data, and the numbers have been looking good over this past year. There is a paper that came out from NOAA, and I believe Dave Weller down in La Jolla, that talks about recent sightings from the last year. I don't have that information offhand, but if you Google for Dave Weller gray whales populations, you could find that information. But it is starting to improve.
Okay, writing that down. Okay. Is there any collaboration done with local school districts to share this knowledge with students and perhaps incorporate it into their curriculum?
Yeah, so we have an education and learning team here at the Marine Mammal Center, and they bring student groups on site, and part of the work that we do is shared in their curriculum. And we also take groups out on the bay and teach them about these cetaceans in the water, and they have different activities to do. So there are some programs through the Marine Mammal Center's education team.
Perfect. You are continuing to have questions roll in, so I'm going to keep on going until you tell me to stop.
Okay.
What is the status of integrating and shifting crab pot fishing gear to the pop-up buoy gear technology, which eliminates lines in the swimming column? Also, during the latest UME, would you say the strandings in SF during those years was caused by vessel strikes or emaciation? So two-part.
Okay, so the first part, the pop-up gear, that is something that is still being tested by the fishermen. It is the groups, the companies that are offering the pop-up gear need to apply for an experimental fishing gear permit, and this would allow the fishermen to test the buoy system outside of the season, and they're evaluating it, and the department then will get the results from that test and make a decision whether that gear can be utilized outside of the season. So right now, the pop-up gear or other alternative gear ideas are for when the season closes early, up through the ending of the season in the middle of July, the normal end of the season. This year it ended in April, so it would allow fishermen to keep fishing. But products are being tested by the fishermen themselves, and I'm not aware of any specific gear that has been approved yet, but there are a number of different types that are being tested.
Okay. And then the second part was about the UME in the bay. Let me get back to it. Were the strandings, were they cause more, or do you know, for vessel strikes or emaciation?
Yeah, I know that we had both. I don't have all of the numbers offhand. In order to be able to do a necropsy of a whale, it needs to strand in a location that's accessible by people and in a timely way, so it does not decompose and you can't get all of the data out of the whale that you need. We have seen very skinny whales. We have seen vessel struck whales. We have questions of, does a malnourished whale, is it increased likelihood that it could be impacted by a vessel strike or by other means? So we're continuing to explore those questions.
Okay. All right. So more to come. It sounds like when you come back to talk about the marine mammal work group, maybe more than. All right. A question from the earlier part of the presentation. No, that is not a question. Sorry. There's been a little talk on here about the movie Collision, the documentary about ship strike vessels. It was recommended for folks to check it out. Can you comment on the film? I know it was a panel discussion at the film festival. And would you recommend it for this group?
Yeah, I think Collision is a great film that talks about this issue, and it puts it in different context in different geographies around the world and different challenges and unique situations that each area encounters, as well as similarities. I don't know if it's available on Amazon or other streaming service. I know that the panel that was held at the International Ocean Film Fest in 2023 is available on YouTube, and there was a really great discussion about, it was inclusive of the shipping industry as well as nonprofits and vessel operators. So it was inclusive, and there was a really great discussion about what is being done, what can be done, what the challenges are. So I would highly recommend to anyone that's interested to check out the film Collision.
Okay. And as for those who may not be as familiar, again, it's called Collision, and the filmmaker is Philip with one L, Hamilton. If you wanted to try to find it, but it was a fantastic documentary. Okay, for the gray whale population, what would need to happen to put them back on the endangered status?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, that seems fair. An interesting one for you. How can people with medium-sized sailboats help this process?
Share your sightings. If you're in the bay, when our team is in the bay, we document where the whale is. We call vessel traffic surface so they can alert that to other vessels in the area. That's one of the things we're working with the Harbor Safety Committee on right now, is what is the most effective way to reach different audiences. So kind of awareness that there are whales in the bay, and reporting your sightings. And if you do see a whale, keep your distance.
Okay, all right. A question kind of perhaps related. Are there cameras that can be put on ships to record the whale strikes?
Yeah, there are a lot of technologies that can be utilized. There are infrared and thermal cameras that can be placed on vessels. They can be placed on fixed structures. And if there is a camera on the front of the boat, I know Woods Hole has done a bunch of testing. They have a camera up on a building up in Seattle to use thermal imaging to detect whales. And this is all for awareness. This is assuming the vessel operators can react when they see the whale. So I think there's situations where thermal cameras will help, or infrared cameras will help, and there are situations that it may not be helpful in kind of offshore versus inshore areas.
Okay, great. Okay, is there any evidence that anthropogenic noise from passing ships is driving whales nearer to shore into the fishing grounds?
I'm not aware of any myself. I would probably ask more in the community to find that out. The whales that are here for the food, and they're going to go where the food is. And when we have these marine heat waves and our waters are warming, our upwelling isn't as productive. So the krill that is offshore is not as abundant. So the whales are going to be coming closer to shore and feeding on fish where they know they can get their food. So that's what is driving a lot of the whales inshore.
Great. Well, Kathi, you've given us a tremendous amount of information and not taken a breath, nor I think a sip of water that I've seen. So
I'm about to. I think this room, I think my face is turning red. I think it's 90 degrees in this room right now.
No, you've done fantastic and given so much information, and I think of a lot for us to think about of how we can kind of help with this. But thank you so much for answering the questions. I'm trying to keep tabs if I see any quick ones coming in if someone's typing, but Susan, I think we might be.
Yeah, it's it's sobering on the one hand, but it's just so good to know that there's so much activity and study and dedication and people like you, Kathi, and your team working on this. Because in fact, I wanted to ask you, when I ran into you and the genesis of this talk kind of began a couple months ago or whenever it was, and I had just seen you interviewed on one of the local TV stations about a whale, I think it was a gray whale that had been seen dragging fish nets. And I guess I just wondered, was there ever, I know at the time when I saw you, they were still hoping to find it. Do you remember it? And is there any good news on that, or?
Yeah, I do remember this. This was an entangled gray whale back in April that the Pacifica community had alerted to the media and to the network that there was an entanglement. I went out with a team and responded, and we were hoping that a telemetry buoy, which is placed on the entanglement to help locate the position of the whale. It contains a satellite tag. So when the satellite goes over, we know the position of where the whale is. That had been attached in Southern California with the hopes of responding along the coast. Somewhere along the way, this buoy came off, and that's what we documented on the water that day. The whale, there have been some unconfirmed report sightings of the whale shortly thereafter, but there had also been a lot of press, and we don't have photos to confirm that was the whale. So yeah, sadly that I haven't heard any more about that whale. But I don't want to finish like on a negative thing. And I really want to highlight my industry collaborators, because they also are conservationists at heart. And I've been learning a lot from them. And I learn a lot from everybody every day. And I really appreciate that opportunity, and just want to thank everyone for sharing their knowledge with me too.
Okay, well, it's been a great talk. Thank you for such a thorough update and all the research that that is coming out of, your team and Marine Mammal Center and the collaborators. So yeah, to be continued. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Kathy.
so much, Kathy.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Okay, hope to see everybody in August. We have a really great speaker. It's on our website. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.